they make it all about one issue, and like now the internet's pushing every single thing on the Jews and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, when people do shit wrong, call it out. Like I'm gonna sit here and say, like, hold two thoughts at the same time.
Yeah, what was it? There was one point where he trapped himself. Darryl Cooper did. Joe kind of started to call him out. He's like, what was it? What was it? He was like, okay, so you're saying this about, at what point did Hitler start making these moves against the Jewish people, as though he was trying to talk about, like, and Cooper he doesn't really answer it, and he starts to try, and he didn't want to admit that it was way sooner than people think. He kind of blurs that line. It's like he was making moves way before war had really broken out. Like the Lebensborn program, what was that, 38, 37, I believe, was the beginning of the Lebensborn program, where they were kidnapping children, Dutch children, to breed, human breeding, to create their next generation. So anyways.
It's also, what about the 3 million Poles too?
Right.
That they killed along the way. You know, this isn't, they make it all about one issue, and like now the internet's pushing every single thing on the Jews and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, when people do shit wrong, call it out. Like I'm going to sit here and say, like, hold two thoughts at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The current Israeli government is very bad. I do not fuck with Smotrich. I do not fuck with Ben-Gvir, who I believe is out now, but was in that government for a while. I do not fuck with Netanyahu. I think what they're doing in Gaza is completely wrong. And I also think that as a party that, you know, there's a lot of parties in Israel that won a minority part of the vote. They do not represent all the people of Israel. I, for one, would not want people around the world, and I know they did, and I understand this, conflating me with George Bush and Dick Cheney when we started all those wars, right? So I try to pay the same respect to the people. I can say all that, and I can say that, like, Mossad is extremely good at what they do, and they do some very dirty shit, including Jeffrey Epstein, which I believe was their operation. And at the same token, I can also say that World War II was very bad. The Holocaust was very bad. It did happen. There's all kinds of evidence for you people out there, for people who are now trying to relitigate something like this. And a guy like Hitler, who, yeah, he hated the Jews a lot. He also hated a lot of other people and hated things that in his mind weren't pure. All of that was bad. And the fact that you either have to be all here or all here on an issue as historically, like, separate, by the way, as something like that is, where we're just in this case now focusing on one race being like the Jewish people, is fucking crazy. And it does make me wonder how many people out there who are saying these things, like, are friends with any Jewish people or something. You know, my one friend Noah I'm from New Jersey. Obviously, my friends are Italian, Irish, Greek, and Jewish. Like, that's what it is. And, you know, Hispanic. But, you know, my one friend Noah used to say, like, where's my check? I'm like, what check? He's like, the check. I'm supposed to get a check from the cabal. That's what everyone tells me. It comes in the mail like once a month. It pays me off. And obviously the joke is that, like, you think there's like this big thing with everyone, but now you're just falling trapped to the same thing we've fallen into the trap of over time, which is that you start to pick bad people and then conflate an entire race with said bad people. I got news for you, man. Every race has bad people and they do bad things. You know, go look at the fucking, what's it called? What's Klaus Schwab's thing? World Economic Forum. There's every race represented on that thing. I can tell you a lot of those people aren't too good. But people don't want to talk about that. Why are we like, why do we go back to this pattern where we have to, like, pick the one boogeyman and people are like, it's everything them?
Because we make sense of the world through narrative. It makes it easier. That complexity. It's almost like our minds. No, I agree. I think what you're saying is perfectly reasonable and is a good way of approaching this. But to answer, yeah, I think that is why. It's just it's a way to simplify the vast complexity.
You bring up the one tweet, and like I do try to be careful when people are just posting screenshots of some tweets, because things can be taken out of context. The one you bring up, I don't think is, like, he said what he said there, whether or not, talking about Darryl Cooper, talking about the picture of Hitler in front of the Eiffel Tower in 1940 versus the Olympics pre-ceremony. You know, it could have been like kind of a joke. I'll give him that. I don't know. But yeah, like, I did a live on YouTube back when that happened. Like, the Olympics pre-ceremony, that was cringy as fuck. And, like, you call it out. But it's an anecdotal thing, right? And it's not to say that that's not representative of a bigger pattern that people are like, okay, maybe we should get something like this in line. But, like, society will move in pendulums and start to get in line. You've seen that in some of the elections since then already. Whereas when you're talking about a nation that had significant GDP and minus their crazy eugenics science, some very high-level engineering and scientific endeavors as Nazi Germany did, with a psychopath who wanted to take all the land, Lebensraum, his word, not mine, I don't know how you can look at that and say, maybe that would have been better. You think someone like that wants to stop there? Like, people talk about Putin. Oh, where will he stop? Putin has the GDP of Italy in Russia. All due respect. You don't have 17, 18 trillion dollars of GDP. So it's limited. Hitler had a high GDP. He rebuilt a lot of that economy. It was a threat. And sometimes I feel like people can't.
But Russia has more weaponry than the Nazis ever had.
That's true. That's true. So you're saying that, so if people are concerned about like Putin as a Hitler, they have a reason to do that, not necessarily because of his economy.
I'm not trying to compare Putin. I think that would be a mistake. I think that's one of the mistakes that's being made. Because people looking at, I think Churchill made the right move. That was the right move, to stand your ground and not negotiate or try for a ceasefire, which they had tried a ceasefire with Hitler. But he had already taken over all of Europe except England at that point, or the UK. He was bent on as much domination. I don't think we can compare that. It's just not quite accurate to compare the two. But my point there is just, so I think when Trump is sitting there with Zelensky, that should be we are trusting him to make that his number one priority, is avoiding nuclear conflict, because it would be the end for us and them. And that's my only, I don't have much of I did one video on that, and it's really that was the only point I was trying to make. I don't think it was that nuanced. It's just like, that's the framework in which that's the first principle to examine this through. I just forgot what I was going to say, but
I do that too.
Oh, and if you have the chance to do a ceasefire, try it. I understand people are saying, well, there's like a huge chance he'll break the ceasefire, but okay, we'll cross that bridge when we get there then. If you can stop the bullets, let's stop them. And I understand the argument that that'll just allow them to become stronger. In the meantime, they'll rearm, and so
it's not a black and white solution for something like that.
It never is.
For sure, it never is. And people want that because they'll either say, they'll get pissed, righteously so, in some ways, that we've given fucking $500 billion to Ukraine, and so they decide that the issue is completely null and void, or they'll be like, throw a Ukraine flag in their bio and say, fund them into perpetuity.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when I see comments just on what I just articulated there, like I was saying, that was the point of that video. I see Warren is a Russian or a Putin sympathizer now and everything. It's like, really, how do you deduce that from just that? And that's also, it's just the critics, I would say, that there's some people that really don't like me and what I'm doing. And I guess it's because they think I'm like, Destiny wants to debate in the conditions of debating me. He's like, I don't want to talk about philosophy or anything esoteric. Like, I don't like all that mumbo jumbo. I'll debate you on anything to do with Trump's policy. I'm like, man, that doesn't interest me. I'm not an expert on, it's not what
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.